Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and it's time for the Game Week 36 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. The video where we're going to have a look at some potential transfer trends we do and do not want to jump in on. If you do enjoy this one, guys, please do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Without further ado, let's have a look at the rules of the video. Alright, so buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are players you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps are players you might be thinking about removing. I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now, but I think they are potential traps that maybe, just maybe, should be avoided. 2 players in each category. Let's start off with some buys. So our first buy for Game Week 36 is going to be Alexander Isak. So double game week next, Leeds and Brighton. A Leeds team that have been known to concede a few goals of late. Maybe things will change slightly under Allardyce, but they're still not a great defence really. And we've got this Brighton team who just conceded a boatload of goals to an Everton side. And they looked really leggy in that game. So you never know. You kind of look at these fixtures and you kind of feel like, oh, okay, this is interesting. There could be goals in this one. And maybe this Newcastle defence that aren't providing too much. Maybe it might be worth going in on their attack instead, and that's exactly where your friend Isak comes in. So he seems to be the first choice striker for Newcastle, and I think Newcastle fans will probably agree with that one. He is the main man at this particular club, and his numbers are pretty decent. 2 goals and 1 assist in his past 5 game weeks, which included 1 sub appearance, of course. 1.28 expected goals, 1 expected assist there as well. So he's got a little bit of creativity as well, and he seems to be a pretty decent finisher, overperforming pretty consistently throughout this season by just a little bit, which seems to kind of suggest that he is capable of making very good of limited chances that he may get in front of him. So overall, doing really well. I think there is a slight amount of rotation risk for Isak. I mean, I don't think Isak is ever fully safe. We have seen him rotated with Wilson just a little bit, but other than that, I feel like he is the nailed-on guy. If you're looking for the most nailed-on Newcastle attacker, Isak is that person. So if minutes are your priority, this guy has you absolutely covered. And what a joy to watch he is. Can potentially play on the left wing as well, depending on the availability of some other players at Newcastle. So he has that kind of a couple of different options there. So yeah, looking really good for Isak. I think he is the safe buy for this game week. But I am also going to throw in Callum Wilson as another buy. And I do genuinely feel like these Newcastle forwards are the priority buys for this game week. And I don't even think that you just need to just pick one. You can easily go for both of them. I think that's also a great idea. Something you could definitely considering doing, particularly as they have Leicester at home the game week after. Now, Wilson is a player who is much more minutes risk. He is not going to be starting every single game for Newcastle. And you'll be quite lucky to get him starting all 4 games for the remainder of the season. But what is great about Wilson is that it doesn't matter if he starts or not because he is so good. He is so good at scoring goals, which is exactly what we want as a FPL asset, right? So 5 goals in his last 5 game weeks, which only included 2 starts. 2.54 XG, 0.33 XA. You might think he's been overperforming on his XG recently. We spoke about this a little bit in the stream I did last night, but actually Wilson is a player who has consistently overperformed his XG for years. I know people, when they see Erling Haaland or Heung-min Son, they see those kind of players overperform their XG and they say, yeah, this is just standard. This is what they do. They are, you know, elite world-class finishers. Wilson is in the exact same category, and that's been proven time and time again. In fact, I always used to have this saying with my FPL team that was pretty much, when Wilson is fit, you have to have him in your FPL team because he really is that good whenever he's available. Another great thing about Wilson is that he's often a player who is protected, and considering he is their best goal scorer at Newcastle, and that's kind of been proven time and time again, there's nothing really to protect him for and rotate him for. And we also always see Wilson play these midweek games. For some reason, Wilson always plays the midweek game. So in the game week 36, I think you are going to get 1 start out of him. And you wouldn't really complain about a start from either of these games, particularly if you can put up some really, really good numbers, which we think that he can. But he is much riskier than Isak, and I think that does need to be taken into consideration. There are more minutes risks here substantially. But when Wilson is on the pitch, he's going to be the guy on penalties as well at all times that he's on the pitch. So there is a lot of upside here. And if you feel like you want to take a bit of a risk on the higher upside player, I actually do prefer Wilson to Isak. But Isak is safer, so it's kind of going to be up to you guys. Are you willing to take the risk on Wilson? Do you want to play it safe with Isak? Or are you going to go all in and get both of these strikers in your team? I think both options, all 3 of those options are good ones. You can't really go wrong with these guys. Now, as much as it pains me to say, Solly March is finally a sell. Okay, guys, yep, you got me. I know a lot of you guys always kind of go at me in the comments for kind of maybe overhyping Solly March. I do think he is Brighton's best player, and I'm going to stick with that one. However, unfortunately, he's injured. He's pulled a hamstring, and best case scenario, he's going to be out for 2 weeks. And that does take us all the way into the second game against Manchester City. It could also be a season ender. It depends how significant the injury is. But even in the best case scenario, you're not going to get any minutes out of him in Game Week 36. And that's kind of a lot of the appeal of going for these Brighton players, right? So March can be as good as he likes. If he's not available, he needs to be sold. And I do think there's a couple of opportunities to buy some other players. Now, first of all, Arsenal and Newcastle, I know it looks bad on paper, but for an attacker, I don't think this is such a bad pair of fixtures. Both teams have been known to concede a goal or two recently, so, you know, it's kind of a middle range kind of double game week. I do think we could go for some other Brighton players, because I don't think Brighton are suddenly in bad form because of that loss to Everton. Remember, the 2 games before that, they managed to beat Manchester United and were good value for that win, and the game before that, they absolutely destroyed Wolves, so don't have too short of a memory. Brighton is not suddenly in bad form. We can call this a blip more than anything, and actually, in that Everton game, Brighton were actually slightly better on XG than Everton. Maybe a bit of a howler from Steele there, which could be maybe some concerns about potential rotation for Steele as well. But back onto the subject of March and potential March replacements, I would personally go straight to Mitoma if you don't already have him. But I do think you could also go for Mac Allister as well if you want to stay in on the Brighton midfield. If you want to go a little bit differential, there are some other options as well. So Joelinton and Willock at Newcastle also look kind of interesting if you wanted to take a slightly different route into the Newcastle attack. Both those two midfielders have been putting up some really nice numbers recently, and they have been performing as well and scoring FPL points on the pitch. More so Joelinton, but Willock actually has the slightly better underlying data. So there are definitely options to move March to other players, and also, you know, players like Rashford if you don't have him already as well. There's a lot of good options. I'd also probably sell Tony, and I think he's a really easy transfer to a Newcastle forward, I guess. His numbers just have been really down recently, Tony. They're just, you know, he's just not putting up those good numbers at the moment, and that's partially down to the lack of penalties. And I don't want to call Tony a penalty merchant, but it is well recognised that a lot of the FPL points he has kind of scored in the past have been a lot down to penalties, which is great, and they all count for the exact same amount of points, don't get me wrong, but the numbers are down. The last 3 fixtures of the season, they don't look amazing. West Ham are defending well against Manchester United last game week, and then Spurs, you know, keeping a clean sheet last game week as well, and then Man City as well. Not a great 3 fixtures, and I feel like Tony is a reasonably easy move to move to a Newcastle striker, but outside of that, I think there's a few other forwards that a lot of you guys are going to own that maybe you could move on as well. For example, Watkins is a potential sell there. You know, maybe a Jota if you have him. It's difficult to say exactly which players will do really well and which players won't in the forward position. I would move pretty much anyone to a Newcastle striker other than Erling Haaland, maybe not Harry Kane, and Watkins is a difficult one, I know, but it's going to be a move that a lot of people are going to want to make. But if you have Tony, and I know a lot of people do, I think he is quite a straightforward swap to a Newcastle forward. Kaoru Mitoma, I don't know why so many people are selling him. He is 100% a keep, and I know people have been disappointed with some of his blanks recently, but if we look at the underlying data here, and if we watch him on the pitch, you can see that FPL returns are coming, and he's been super unlucky not to get more. 1.69 XG during this 5-game week period. No, he hasn't scored any goals during that time, but man, has he been close. 3 big chances to score, 13 shots in this time, and that's with just 4 starts during this period as well. Creating a little bit for his teammates as well, just over 1 expected assist during this period. And over this amount of fixtures, how important Mitoma is going to be now that March is out really cannot be understated. Brighton are still heavily chasing European spots. They want to lock down a European slot for next season, and the only way they're going to do that is by overplaying their best players. Mitoma is very lucky to have a rest last game week, so maybe that's going to mean for the final 5 games of the season, he is just going to be playing. So absolutely a player to keep. Arguably a player to buy if you don't already have him. I would be looking at him as a Solly March replacement if you don't already have him as well. I think he's a really good pick. I'll make no secret of the fact that, you know, I always thought Mitoma was kind of second to March, but March is out, which makes Mitoma the player to own from Brighton. So there's no way I would be selling him, even though I know a lot of people have been disappointed with Brighton recently. It does seem to be a lot down to bad luck rather than these players being bad picks, you know? So, yeah, definitely hold the faith, hold the faith. Next keep is Rashford, another player who people are selling, and I cannot fathom why. Other than maybe people are just trying to look for differentials right now. Seems absolutely crazy to me. Rashford's numbers at the moment are really, really good, and yes, he hasn't scored every single game necessarily, but, you know, 1 goal and 2 assists in 4 game weeks is not the worst, considering it's considered him in a bad spell. And moving forward, I think there's some real opportunities for Manchester United players to get some points. So, for example, Wolves, yes, Wolves play very well at home, but this is not a home game for Wolves. Wolves are one of the worst defences in the league when they play away from home. They've got nothing to play for the remaining few games, and Manchester United do need to secure this top 4 position, having lost against West Ham in game week 35. They really do need to return with something very good in this game, and I think they absolutely can do that against Wolves when playing at home. After that, another 2 teams with nothing to play for in Bournemouth and Chelsea, and finally in game week 38, playing once again against a team with nothing to play for. So these are all fixtures against teams that don't necessarily have the best defences in the league, with pretty much no motivation, nothing to play for, just waiting for next season to see what they can achieve next season. None of these teams that Man United play have chance of European football or really a significant chance of getting relegated either. So they are playing a bunch of beach teams, and I would be loading up on Manchester United players ahead of game week 36. I think they could really outperform some of the double game week players as well. Manchester United players, I think they're onto a good thing, and I wouldn't worry too much about the slip up against West Ham. On to some avoids, guys. We've got Almiron first of all. I know people are looking for some interesting Newcastle players to buy in the double, and Almiron has obviously scored a lot of FPL points over the course of the entire season. However, pretty much all of those points did come the first half of the season. Let's be completely honest. Up until the World Cup, Almiron was an absolute beast, an absolute machine, and pretty much an essential pick in FPL. However, it's just not been the same since then, and even more recently, Almiron, despite being fit now, just isn't really first choice. Jacob Murphy has taken his position on that right wing, and it doesn't seem like Almiron is anywhere near being nailed on. He's far more likely to be on the bench than he is in the starting 11, and even when he is on the pitch, it's not like Wilson where he's super clinical, getting loads of chances to score. You can see his underlying numbers in the past 5 game weeks. 0.06 XG, 0.17 XA. That's really quite low numbers, and we shouldn't really be expecting anything from Almiron over the course of the double game week. So I don't think he's the player I'd go for. Like I say, if I wanted a midfielder from Newcastle, I'd be looking at Joelinton and Willock. Those would be the 2 players to go for. Almiron, Alan Saint-Maximin, these kind of players, just not really worth it in my opinion. I would stick with the forwards, and if you really want to go differential, like I said, those other midfielders that I've mentioned seem pretty good as well. And the second avoid is Dunk, but again, I am slightly picking on Dunk because what I really mean to say here is maybe all Brighton defenders, with maybe the exception of Pervis Estupiñán, just because Pervis Estupiñán offers a really nice amount of attacking threat and has had really nice expected points data recently. But Dunk, Steele, Webster, whoever else, it's a little bit more difficult for them because they don't really have that attacking threat, and they play against Arsenal and Newcastle, both of whom will be away fixtures, and we're talking about playing against 2 of the most in-form attacks in the entire league. Coming off the back of a heavy defeat with Steele, have a bit of a blunder. Maybe there's going to be goalkeeper rotation there as well. And to be honest, the biggest thing of all is Brighton at the moment do look a little bit leggy. They do look a little bit leggy. You can tell that the fatigue is setting in a little bit. And with 2 more double game weeks, it's not likely to end anytime soon. It's a difficult time for Brighton. They've got to play a lot of fixtures, and there may be times where they do concede the odd goal. I mean, they've been struggling to keep clean sheets consistently anyway over the last kind of month or so. So I just feel like I wouldn't be going in on Brighton defence right now. If I already had a Brighton defender, yeah, obviously I would be playing them. 2 games in 1 game week, it gives you an extra chance at least of a clean sheet, which are very difficult to find no matter where you go. But I would be more looking at the attacking players and seeing what attacking returns we can get from Brighton, because in terms of clean sheets, I really do feel like players like Trent Alexander-Arnold or, Trippier, maybe even Botman, Fabian Schär with the double game weeks, there's a lot of other kind of players, maybe even Luke Shaw. they all could outscore a lot of the Brighton defenders and the Brighton defences. You say the same thing about goalkeepers. De Gea, I probably fancy more than Steele this game week, potentially. Maybe Alisson if you have him. So it's difficult to say exactly what to do. If you already have these Brighton defenders, do you bench them? Do you play them? I probably would still edge towards playing them, but would I be picking them up right now? No, not over the likes of Newcastle players or, you know, Brighton attackers or, you know, even potentially Manchester United players if you don't have them already. That would be my priority in terms of transfers in over Brighton defenders. I just don't think it's quite the right time, but hey, game week 37 against Southampton, maybe that might be a slightly better opportunity to bring in a Brighton defender, but even then, we've got Manchester City there, we've got Aston Villa after that. I think it's, the time for Brighton defenders may be approaching the end, to be fair, but let me know what you think about that one, guys. So in conclusion, we are going to be focusing probably mostly on Brighton and Newcastle players, but don't ignore other teams entirely. There are going to be some other opportunities to score points, particularly Manchester United. I do fancy them against Wolves this game weekend. Manchester City play against Everton, which is interesting at the very least, if you can kind of figure out who's going to be playing and who isn't. So yes, a little bit of focus on the double game week here, but don't completely ignore some of the other players there. I would like to know, guys, which of Wilson or Isak are you going to go for this game week? Or are you going to go for both? And I want to hear why. Why do you prefer Isak? Why do you prefer Wilson? And why are you going all in with the double Newcastle attack? Although I can kind of understand that one. That sounds like a really, really nice differential to have. Yeah, let me know, guys, what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this one, please do drop a like, do subscribe if you are new around here too. And we'll have plenty more content this week, as we always do. Looking forward to posting my team selection video and showing you just how low my score was in game week 35. But aside from that, guys, a couple of videos on the channel for game week 36 already. Make sure you go check them out. But until I see you on the next one, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.